there are certainly appropriate ways to deal with emotions, okay? You know, breast development, girls are usually happy about. Menstruation, you know, it's not the best thing, you know, that girls have to go through that. So a lot of times they're a little disgusted or sad about that process. And then boys, again, like I had said with that first ejaculation, they're usually pretty secretive about it. So here, not this last one, but the one prior, the slide that said, can we predict whether a girl will enter into puberty sooner, is there just tends to be some problems associated with little girls that start too soon. Of course, this is not always, but on a grand scheme of things, on a big scale, we tend to see sometimes some problems that can happen. So one of them is little girls who start their periods pretty soon tend to gravitate towards older girls. So if you're in 3rd grade and you've started, you're not going to have a whole lot in common to talk about with your other 3rd grade friends. And, you know, the 4th, 5th graders, 6th graders are certainly going to be girls that understand what you're going through a little bit better. You're probably maturing a lot faster. You're thinking of different things where the other little girls are still playing with dolls and things like that. You have now taken an interest in boys, right? Or girls. So unprotected sex is another problem that we see with girls that start too soon, because they have all of those hormones going on. So they definitely have a lot of testosterone and they're thinking about it and they want to, but they don't have the maturity, right? They don't have the mental capacity to understand what they're doing. And so they're certainly not going to be mature about any decisions that they make. Bullying victims for sure, right? Little girls get made fun of if they develop too fast. We always say little girls that wear a bra in elementary school get made fun of, and then if you're not wearing a bra in middle school, you get made fun of. So poor little girls, you can't do it right? There's no right answer. And here, you know, possible disconnect from school and maybe some poor grades. Okay, they do have a risk of becoming depressed, you know, having body dissatisfaction and being self-conscious. All right, let's see. You know, wrapping up puberty, obviously every child's, you know, reaction or opinion about puberty is going to be different. It's largely affected by the family and society and their group of friends, you know, and how they go through it. So I really think, you know, paying attention, being in tune, good communication with your children, always be available to answer questions. Don't shame them for asking you questions. Don't be afraid of them asking you questions. If you don't know the answer, tell them you don't know and that you guys can look it up together. You want them to feel open and secure and confident that they could come to you and ask you these questions. And if you show them that you're mature and you're able to answer those questions honestly, then they're going to feel a lot more comfortable coming to you when it's a big problem. And that's what we want, right? We want them to feel that they can trust you. For boys, for sure, you know, with girls, I think they get a lot of talking to because they're going to go through this major bodily change, right? And you could say kind of this old idea that, well, it's the girls that get pregnant, so we talk to them more about it. And boys, you know, we tend to not really talk about it. Sometimes guys tell me that their only talk was, you know, their parent giving them a box of condoms and saying, don't get anybody pregnant. And that was kind of the extent of their birds and the bees talk. And that is so under what is needed and what is necessary, you know. In EPISD, and I'm assuming YISD and SISD follow the same guidelines. In 4th grade, the kids get a talk if their parents allow them. In 5th grade, they get a talk pretty much to all of them unless the parent opts out. And this talk goes down usually with the nurse, maybe a coach, and girls are separated off and boys get their own talk. Girls get the talk, pretty much the period talk, and boys get the you're going to grow hair and smell talk. So that is really under educating our young men. I think they should all be together. And I know that's crazy, and God, I would hate to be that. Well, I would like it, but I could see why the nurse or the coach doesn't want to have them all together. The little boys are going to snicker and they're going to laugh, and oh my gosh, it's going to be all immaturity. But little boys need to learn what girls go through, for sure. And little girls need to learn what boys go through, and have it as a more, I think we need a little more, we need to up the ante on our education in that grade level, and put as much of it out there as possible, because we know in middle school, kids are already starting to experiment, if not full on having sex, and trying to have this talk now in high school or in college is just really late. So letting them know what's happening to them is just the best thing that we can do. So for parents, here it's saying definitely communicate about pubertal changes. Here it's saying with the same-sex child, a mom talk to the daughter, dad talk to the son. I can certainly see why that would be beneficial, I guess, but it's certainly not necessary. Obviously, we have, single parents, and they do that talk, and I don't think it matters who it comes from, as long as it's open and it's honest and it's truthful. So help children get involved in positive activities, for sure. We want our teenagers to start to have a special talent or a special skill or a special interest that they have, and that will move through with our life until the very end, until death. So we really want little kids to start, or teenagers, sorry, to start to get some kind of activity that they will really like. For society, obviously, school environment is important. Yes, for sure, earlier introduction to sex education, a better education, a more comprehensive education for these kids. And it can be age appropriate. There's ways to do that, but they just need more information than what our school system is giving them. Provide, obviously, a nurturing environment. Harder is a researcher. She studied self-esteem largely, and she found that there's like 5 aspects of self-esteem. Scholastic competence, right, is how well you're doing at school. Behavioral conduct, if you're a good kid, or are you getting in trouble? Athletic skills, right? Do you have some special skills or something along those lines? How well your friends like you, and your appearance, okay? For adolescents, especially for girls, we find that if a girl does not like her appearance, she feels bad about herself, and it affects the whole self-esteem. So she could be number 1 in her class. She could be the, most outstanding citizen. She gets the citizenship award all the time. She was voted, the sweetest person in high school. She could be a star athlete. She could be the most liked. She has a good group of friends. They all like her. They vote her to be homecoming queen. She could have all of those aspects going for her, but if she doesn't like the way she looks, her whole self-esteem is down. And that is really depressing. Boys are kind of getting to this aspect as well, you know, and boys can feel this way as well. And I just think that is so sad, that we put so much emphasis on how people look rather than all the other things that they have to offer. And, you know, that's societal for sure, right? Where we give more credit to someone's looks than the person that they are. And this really leads into a lot of problems that we see with our teenagers, right? Of course, just low self-esteem. Little girls start to become very self-conscious of their bodies. Self-esteem typically starts to drop for all kids, but especially for girls in 3rd grade. And for little girls, it just continues down a downhill slope to where they're at their all-time unhappy is usually around junior year high school. You know, it's depressing, and it leads to a lot of problems. It leads to hypersexuality, it leads to cutting, it leads to drug use, it leads to you know, depression, and what we're going to get into talk about right now is, you know, eating disorders. So, and again, we are seeing this, you know, mostly with girls, but we do have a lot of boys as well. So the thin ideal, right? This pressure to be abnormally thin. You know, everybody that you see on TV and in the cover of magazines are just, you know, just this ideal that is almost impossible to reach. Girls have to be so skinny. You know, I'm kind of thinking of like Angelina Jolie right now. You know, she's so skinny. And for boys, you know, to have a good body, right? To be muscular. You see these guys, you know, in these muscles, and it's almost too ideal. You know, it's just almost unattainable. So overweight and underweight females usually feel that they're fat, so they can be skinny and they still feel that they're fat. And boys want to build up muscle. You know, concerns of why and how this can start to happen. Obviously, peer pressure. You know, your friends make fun of you, families make fun of you. You know, if you're too big, if you're too skinny, or whatever. You know, dating, if no one's asking you out, if no one likes you, you know, things like they don't ask you to the dance, that's going to start to make you feel self-conscious. And of course, media, like I was just talking about, there's really an unrealistic image. And almost like literally, right, because it's altered, it's photoshopped, or all the plastic surgery and things that goes into making somebody look the way that they look. So this really causes people to have a strong body dissatisfaction. Think of like even little Halloween costumes for little boys, 2, 3, 4-year-old little boys, and then they already have all the muscles built into them. I can understand like the superheroes because that's the way they are. But now it's even with the policemen and the firemen outfits, they have all the muscles. And that's already telling our little bitty baby boys that they have to have these, you know, really abnormal bodies. So anorexia, I'm sure you guys have all heard of all of these eating disorders, but let's just get into a little bit of what classifies them and how you get diagnosed with an eating disorder. So anorexia is a restriction of calories. Usually, you know, they eat something, carrots here and there, celery here and there, or something like that. I know somebody who ate candy, and it's just not, but it's not enough, right? So self-starvation, and really, when they get to about 2/3 of their ideal body weight or less, this is probably going to require medical intervention. They're going to be so, you know, out of whack. Their organs can start shutting down. And anorexia can really cause obviously problems all the way to death, right? So anorexia You know, you can see some excessive exercise with anorexia, and these girls are, and guys are just really, really skinny. I mean, just skin and bones. Okay. For girls, they will probably stop menstruating because they don't have enough body fat to maintain it. That's also an indication that their hormones are all out of whack. And again, they always have a distorted body image. Bulimia is our number one eating disorder. It's the most common one that you see. And the reason why is it's easier to hide. Anorexia, people will eventually notice. Your family, your friends will notice if you're not eating, and you start to physically look so much different. Bulimia, you know, it's the most popular. You know, you can hide it, you can eat and do all these things, and it's not as noticeable because ironically, with bulimia, you don't lose that much weight. If you eat and then you vomit, your body has already absorbed about half of those calories. So vomiting really isn't the most effective way of reducing caloric intake. So bulimia, you know, they usually binge, they eat a lot, and then they purge. And that can be through vomiting or using laxatives, okay? They can also have excessive exercise, you know, and I want to be careful here. You know, this is a really distorted way of thinking also, and they have a really unhealthy relationship with food. They eat and they eat and they eat, and they like the feeling of feeling very full, and then they like the feeling of once it comes out. It can be a very disturbed eating disorder. You know, and sometimes like a bulimic can sit down and take in like 5,000-10,000 calories in one sitting. And so obviously you can see then if they purge that, they've already taken in 2,000, 5,000 calories. It's really not a way to lose weight. Not that I'm promoting that, but other things that happen with bulimia is, you know, the problems that can happen from if you're constantly vomiting, increases your chances of esophageal cancer, mouth sores, you know, the enamel on your teeth and things like that. It can cause a lot of problems. I guess that's it with bulimia. It's not listed on here, but you know, in the DSM, which is the Bible for psychology, we also have binge eating disorder. So it's eating constantly and then you know, not doing anything else. So these individuals tend to be very overweight. So we do have binge eating disorder as well. There is a strong hereditary component. They're saying especially in girls, if the mom is suffering from an eating disorder, it's likely that the girls will suffer from an eating disorder. But I think it's very important to know that we want to be careful. It may or may not be genetics. It may be, I'm trying to see the time here just to make sure. Oh, okay. That it may be genetics, but it also may be if your mom is like that with herself, how is that environment? You know, is she pressing and pushing that on you to be overly skinny and so on, and her behaviors are leading you to also be that way? So that one we want to be careful with. So these girls or these kids, you know, boys too, tend to be anxious. They tend to have a low self-efficacy, definitely have this need for approval. And oftentimes we find they have an inability to express themselves. This kind of is a little checklist you could go through if you're worried about somebody. You know, are they prone to anxiety and depression? Are they really constantly, you know, saying they need to be thin? Or are they always talking about how somebody else is so thin or what a good body they have? Something along those lines. Are they becoming obsessed with dieting? Boys, are they becoming obsessed with building muscle? You know, do they have an insecure attachment? Do they have problems expressing their feelings? Do they have low self-esteem, low self-efficacy? And, you know, do they automatically have that feeling of when something wrong happens, it's because they're fat, or they feel fat all the time, or something like that. So this obviously isn't a perfect list, you know, but if you have a teenager in your life that's starting to express a lot of these things, that's starting to show a lot of these, you know, maybe just keep your eye on them or talk to them, so on. So, you know, little girls, you want to watch their self-worth, right? Feeling bad about themselves, depression, really paying attention to being thin. Okay. Try and focus on self-efficacy, that if they want to change themselves, they can. They have that ability to do that. They are in charge of their life. Promote a true self-esteem, right? Moms sometimes like to say, oh, you're just the best ever. And little kids, you know, we see through that, right? So a real self-esteem. You are really good at this. You are really good at this, or you're really kind, or you're really funny. Okay. Demand genuine effort, right, into trying to change whatever it may be. Autonomy, right? It's your choice always. And then dialectic behavior therapy would be something that, you know, obviously we get your child into a therapy session, cognitive behavioral therapy or something like that. So first, sexual feelings, excuse me, usually around age 10, right? So fourth grade or fifth grade or so, starting to feel those first feelings, okay? Could be, right, because of the testosterone and all that good stuff, kicking up that sex drive, and nurture, right? We start to notice our own bodies. We start to notice if boys or girls or whatever checking us out and looking at us. And so, you know, in the environment, you start to pick up on cues as well. So let's see. So who are these kids, you know, doing it with? Well, you know, most of them report having a steady partner that they engage in sexual activity with, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Okay. So about 20% report that it was somebody outside of a relationship, maybe a friend or a crush or something like that. So let's see, Ohio teenagers engaging in non-committed sex. So here it's saying that little girls can have a risk factor, or run the risk of getting depression if they have a lot of outside sexual partners, or if they just have non-committed sex with people. That one is real hard for me, because we want to be cognizant and think of all of the other factors that could be leading into that. First and foremost, for my older generation, you know, myself and older, if a girl is sleeping around a lot, then she's considered, you know, a slut, right? And there's that negative connotation that's coming with that. And so our older generation probably has this feeling of depression because of that societal expectation that she wouldn't be doing that. We could also argue maybe she's depressed and therefore that's why she does that. And it's not the sex that's causing the depression, but it's the depression that's causing the sex, as a way to find acceptance, as a way to find love, as a way to self-validate. And you could argue maybe even self-medicate through sexual activity. So, you know, we want to be careful with that one, which one came first. So I think in this day and age, where we're definitely having more female rights, and, you know, we're trying to get away from the idea that, you know, girls don't have to be virgins. They don't have to save themselves for marriage, or, you know, they're not a slut if they've done a few things. And also the other side of it too, that boys can be sluts too, right? Boys can be have too much sex also. So I think that this younger generation is doing a little bit of a better job in handling that. So I'm a little iffy with this research right here. Okay. Yes, right. Here's, definitely a double standard. And I think that it still exists. I think it's going away, especially with our younger generation, but I think for the most part, it still exists, that girls who have too much sex are sluts. Boys that have a lot of sex are, studs. Okay. Uh, yes, we definitely need better sex education. The United States is so bad in sex education. If you compare the United States to, say, Canada or all of, the Western European countries, they, and Brazil for that matter, it's just out there. They just talk about it. It's not secretive. It's not taboo. And they just lay it all out there. Here in the United States, we largely have an abstinence only education where we kind of say, this is what it is, but don't do it. Comprehensive education is, this is what it is. These are all the things that could happen to you. These are all the STDs. This is pregnancy. This is how you can protect yourself. This is, relationships. This is different types of love. This is what's healthy. This is what's not healthy. Pretty much human sexuality, if you guys haven't taken it, that class. And we need that because we see that kids who have comprehensive sex education delay their first sexual encounter. So they're older when they first do it. They have less STDs, so they're obviously protecting themselves, and they have less teen pregnancies. So here in the United States, we are off the charts in STDs and teen pregnancies. And we have the earliest onset of sexual activity among teenagers. So we really should look at it and say what we're doing is not working, and we should change it. All right. That's it with that. Oh, and we're done. That's all I have to say about that. And yes, right, romance and relationships, go figure, right? Give some kids some education about healthy relationships and so on. All right, well, look at that, it's 1:58. I made it under the hour. Just a little tip, right? Our test will be open on Friday. It'll close on Sunday. It's over these 5, 6, 7, and 8 chapters. It'll be the same format as the last test, multiple choice, about 40, 45, maybe 50 questions, something like that. And I guess that's it. Are there any questions from anyone?